Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro, and welcome to Grandma Has ADHD. I'm a certified senior move manager and owner of Silver Linings Transitions, where I help people navigate life's big transitions. But here's the thing, I spent years helping families move through change while completely missing the pattern that was running through my own life. I am the daughter of 2 ADHD parents, the mother of 3 ADHD children, and yep, I have ADHD too. For years, I didn't have the language or understanding for what that meant. But becoming an ADHD coach and specialist, that's been absolutely game-changing. Not just for how I work with my clients, but for how I relate to my family, and honestly, for how I understand myself. I even wrote a book about it called This Explains So Much. This podcast is for all of us who are discovering ADHD later in life. Each week, I bring you conversations with industry experts and people sharing their own ADHD journeys, real stories, real strategies, and often a little too much information. If you're loving what you're hearing, please share this podcast, leave us a review, and find me at jamishapiro.me. That's JAMISHAPIRO.me. Whether you're over 50 and just getting diagnosed, or you're recognizing patterns you've lived with your whole life, this is your space to navigate ADHD with others who get it. So grab your coffee and get comfortable and let's dive in. Quick update before we dive in. You've heard me talk about the Sparkler Society. It turns out running a full membership community was more than I could actually sustain right now. And if I'm going to teach you not to overload yourself, I'd better practice it too. So I scaled it back to Sparkler Circle, 1 live group coaching call a month, same spirit, way less overwhelm. If you want to learn more with no commitment, just grab a seat at jamishapiro.me. That's JAMISHAPIRO.me. Back to the show. I am very excited because my guest today is Emma McAdam, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a master's degree from Utah State University and nearly 2 decades of experience in mental health. She has worked across some of the most dynamic settings in the field: juvenile corrections, wilderness therapy, eating disorder treatment, adventure therapy programs, and more. But here is what I love about Emma's story. When her first daughter was born, she now has 4 girls. She wanted to be home with her baby. So instead of seeing clients, she started waking up in the wee hours of the morning while her babies slept and making short mental health videos. That one small thing became therapy in a nutshell, a wildly popular YouTube channel and online course platform that has helped thousands of people access real, practical mental health skills without the barriers of cost, stigma, or geography getting in the way. Emma has a gift for taking the science of why we do what we do and turning it into something you can actually use in your everyday life. And today, she is bringing that approach to a topic that so many of us with ADHD know all too well: emotional dysregulation. Why do our feelings hit so much harder? What does executive function have to do with it? And what can we actually do about it? We are going to get into all of it. When she's not creating content, Emma is out exploring the world with her husband and 4 daughters, spending time outdoors and always learning something new. Emma, welcome to the Grandma Has ADHD podcast. I am so glad you are here.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me. This is going to be fun, I'm sure.
It is. And just for our listeners, I had the privilege of hearing Emma, and I have actually gone to your YouTube channel because I personally struggle with rejection sensitivity and a lot of feelings, and found you. And then I got to hear you at the Neurodiversion Conference 2026, where you were a speaker. So Emma knows nothing about me, but I did confirm that I'm allowed to discuss Emma's ADHD. And she is out. And I also have a couple other nuggets that I picked up in your bio. We have a lot in common, as I always find I do with my fellow ADHDers, but welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure, because this is one of those conversations where I'm probably going to benefit from hearing you. And I think a lot of our listeners will as well. I always like to ask people, I know that you are not a grandmother. By the way, I am not a grandma either, but I got into this when I realized that my mom, who was almost 77, had never been diagnosed with ADHD. Generations of women who their daughters didn't get diagnosed. And so they are now coming to this conversation with the mixed emotions of what would my life have been like. And just, I'm kind of that foray into this new world for them. So anyway, I'd like to hear more about how you discovered your own ADHD.
Ooh, interesting question. I have never been asked that before. So I think people have been telling me like, oh, you have ADHD for a long time. ADD, it was called back in my day. But I definitely, like as a kid, was a very weird kid. Like I was into all kinds of random stuff. Like I liked being outdoors, and I liked fishing, and I liked tying flies, and I liked carving and stuff that like no like 11, 12, 13-year-old girl is into. So I was just like a weird kid, but I also like could not sit still in class very well. I did not get in a lot of trouble because I would usually just hide a book under my desk, but then I'd get in trouble for like reading in class because like school was just very boring for me. And I think as I had kids and was very disrupted in my like systems and routines, that is when kind of it started hitting the fan. I did therapy for the first time. My husband and I have done therapy together. And this last fall, we just got to a breaking point where it's like, this is like all the things we've been trying to hold together is not working anymore. And I got to the point where I'm like, fine, I'll try meds. I'll go to the doctor. I'll check into hormone replacement therapy. I'll try this. I'll try that. So basically last fall, like everything was just kind of, it felt like it was all falling apart. And this was probably because my 11-year-old daughter was really struggling, and that was putting a lot of tension on our marriage. But she certainly has some like similar traits to mine. And we got her an ADHD assessment, and they just gave her like a very standard like form for me to take to her teachers. And anyway, I'm going off track. Long story short, they gave my daughter.
Of course you are.
They gave my daughter an ADHD assessment, and I send it into her teachers, which is part of it. Like it has to show up in at least 2 settings. So my husband and I like marked her as like most likely having ADHD. Like she met the criteria based on our assessment, but the teachers, she like masks like crazy at school. Like she's so anxious, and I've had a lot of anxiety growing up, and still do. But her teachers don't see it at school, so she'd go to school and just mask, and be like so anxious and not want anyone to see that she's having a hard time. Then she'd come home from school, open the door, slam the door, scream and cry, stomp upstairs, like throw a little fit, and just like because she had just white knuckled it all the way through school. So she didn't meet the criteria for an ADHD diagnosis. And one of my other kids did. So last fall we were just like, what do we do? What do we do? Like, how do we parent these kids? And so I met with a psych nurse practitioner. I was looking into potentially getting on some ADHD meds. I have a friend who's like an ADHD specialist, and for years she's been like, Emma, right? Emma, do you think you might have ADHD? And I'm like, I don't know. I do too good in school to have ADHD. That was because I didn't know enough about it.
No, you know, I have a cousin who's a marriage and family therapist with a PhD and also has ADHD, and really didn't understand the impact of ADHD until she read my book, which made me feel good because I don't have a PhD, but I have 2 parents with ADHD. 2 of my 3 children have been formally diagnosed, but I suspect my third also has it. She has OCD. She's been diagnosed with that, and that OCD so strong that it might mask the ADHD because everything's got to be perfect, and her anxiety is far worse than the anxiety of my other 2. So yeah. So you were actually in the mental health space and helping people with their emotions before you realized that you had ADHD. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think I did an MFT degree as well. And, we spent a week in the DSM on like developmental disorders, ADHD and autism and stuff, but that's about it.
1 week.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's not the same as maybe a psychologist would spend. They have a different field of study. We spend a lot more time focusing on systems thinking. But I think I remember going to a conference 10 years ago. I went to an ADHD conference 10 years ago, and there was one class on adult ADHD, and it was like packed to the brim because that was the first time people were even talking about ADHD as being possibly going into adulthood. Like that was brand new. Also, that was like the most disrupted, like people were raising their hands and talking like impulsively the whole time, but it was fun. It was really fun.
Well, that's what's fun about hosting an ADHD podcast, because pretty much everybody that I interview has ADHD, and I joke it's like herding cats.
Yeah.
Because, getting people to be there. I mean, but it's also so much fun because the conversations are so authentic, and and I, just like, hey, let's make mistakes and let's be who we are. So, okay, so here's a question you weren't anticipating, but I'm going to ask it.
Yeah.
Do you think now that you might have a parent who has ADHD?
So this is really interesting. As I listened to and this was a couple of years ago, I listened to ADHD 2.0, and I was like, oh, and like things are starting to fall into place, right? Like I've been considering this ADHD feature for a long time, but my mom, so neither my mom nor I have like difficulty starting, like difficulty with motivation or difficulty with school or studies. But like if I look at my mom, it's like high rejection sensitivity, can never sit down, loses her glasses every 10 minutes, always like busy, always worrying, like that default mode network just going. So like if you looked at that from the outside, you could say, well, and I think for myself too, like I definitely thought, oh, there's definitely been times in my life where I fit the criteria of anxiety disorder or depressive disorder, but had not really understood it from the lens of an executive function issue until the last couple of years. So,
okay. So
yeah. So potentially for my mom, but she functions really well. So
yeah. Well, that was why I dismissed it when my ex-husband accused me of having it, because I did have a hyperactive half brother who had to be on Ritalin in the 80s. And so when he said you have it, I'm like, no, I don't. I graduated college with high honors. I started a business. I've, done, but I also have realized I can't stop. I can't just be. It's like uncomfortable. And even since I went through ADHD coaching, I've learned that behavior addictions can be exercise or working or so. Anyway, that's I didn't mean to sabotage, but those of us with ADHD, we've always got to talk about ourselves. But I did want to ask you a question. Just, have you seen the meme? Do you remember the show Scooby-Doo, when there was a villain at the end and they were always taking the mask off?
Yeah.
Okay. So I love this mask, and I think it's especially relevant to my audience of the Scooby-Doo gang taking the mask off the villain, which was anxiety and depression. And underneath it was undiagnosed ADHD.
Heck yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Because I think for so many of the people that are coming to their whole time, they thought anxiety, depression. And now they're like, oh, wait a minute. And that's exactly what happened with my mom. So that was one of the reasons that I wanted to get into with you. I also don't have a problem with motivation unless it's math or taxes or paying my bills and something that I don't want to do. Then I struggle. But I will say, and I've actually said this in my book, that I would say my biggest challenge with ADHD is my rejection sensitivity. And so I would love to hear more from you about that one.
Yeah, well, and certainly. I think for me, I've dealt with a lot of anxiety my whole life. And I have spent 20 years as a therapist, and working in treatment places, learning a ton about it, and applied so many of the tools, and still find myself dealing with significant levels of anxiety. When I started to frame it and understand it from more of an executive function approach, it did shift how I've managed it and how I've understood it, and given me a lot more options. It's interesting too, because I worked in residential treatment, and we worked in this treatment center. I know a lot of people have bad feelings about residential treatment centers, and I just want to clarify, I would only work for the ones that treated these kids with extreme respect. we did not like use control and punishment and rewards to like manipulate them. We used our relationships to build levels of trust and then ask them to grow. So just to be clear, but I worked in this residential treatment center where most of the girls came in with diagnoses like borderline personality disorder. They were dealing with suicidal ideation, really extreme and risky sexual behaviors, self-harm, extreme like emotions going up and down, and like these impulsive and dangerous behaviors. And looking back now, like 15 years later, and my friend who's the ADHD specialist also worked there. Both of us look back on that and like we just wonder like how many of these girls were really like the underlying executive function difficulties were the real root of the problem. And we had a great psychologist there who would talk a lot about these gaps, these cognitive gaps in the IQs, where there'd be like a 30-point gap between maybe their processing speed and their working memory. And that would make it very, very hard to regulate emotions. Mm-hmm. So did I answer your question? What was your question about how have I dealt with?
It was really rejection. First of all, the fact that I remembered the question without writing it down, I want to give myself a gold star.
Way to go. Yes.
But I had asked you about rejection sensitivity because I said that's what I said. But you actually said something along the way that I want to ask you first, and maybe we'll get there. Yeah. You said that, you struggle with anxiety, and that you said, I believe one of your daughters struggles with anxiety. And I also have had that as a parent. And what do you tell your daughters? Because anxiety it's a thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. What do I tell my daughters? As a mom of younger kids, I actually find it less effective to talk with them about their feelings, unfortunately. Like I try to be present for them and I try to listen, and I often like don't do an amazing job at that. Sometimes I'm just not great at that. The one thing that I feel like is really important as parents is to consistently say, yes, you do feel anxious about going to school, and you still are going to school. You're going to go to school anxious. You feel really anxious about doing this. She like spoke in church the other day, and she was way scared about it. And it's not like I didn't force her to do it. She could have chosen not to. But the language I constantly use is just like, yeah, like these are hard things. This is really tough. And when we choose to face up to and do hard things, we come to learn that we're okay and we're safe anyway. Yeah. And I think because of that, she's gained a lot of trust in herself and her ability to handle those feelings. And like anxiety is a thing, it's a feeling, but we don't let it make our decisions. So I think more like showing rather than telling has been really important. Now with her, once we finally got the school to listen, because she acted so perfect at school, once we got the school to listen, we also got her 2 like wellness room breaks a day. And I'd send her with a fanny pack with beef jerky. And that like, honestly, night and day difference. Like 2 5-minute breaks and a fanny pack with beef jerky. Like, or like something she was eating during the day. And she's done like way better.
That's great. Okay. So I, as a parent of 3 children who all have anxiety, I used to talk about building their resiliency muscle. And I would say, think of it as a muscle. And every time you do something uncomfortable, because I actually had cancer when my youngest were 1 and 3. It's been 21 years and I'm healthy, thank God. But, but it was really helpful for me to just say, hey, you're going to face hard things. So these are just little tests of how we get there. But like I said, most of my audience are women 45 and over, a lot of, senior women who didn't get diagnosed. And I would say if I polled my audience, anxiety and social anxiety are probably going to be among the biggest challenges, especially because a lot of them aren't raising kids and working right now. So can you talk to them?
Yeah. Well, first off, I can say, like, I feel you. I've experienced so much anxiety and social anxiety, which includes like rejection sensitivity. But even like when I'm hanging out in a group of people, I will say something and then I will have 50 thoughts about like, oh, just be chill. That was so stupid. What's the matter with you? And like these thoughts will just fly so fast. And I can't tell. I think I'm actually awkward. Pretty sure I'm actually awkward some of the time. But then also there's that piece that like the anxious part of your brain is telling you, oh my gosh, you're a complete social reject. Like, why would you say that? That's so embarrassing. Everyone hates you. Like all of that is just those thoughts that fly so fast sometimes. And with ADHD, that impulsivity, your brain does not have the braking system to slow that stuff down. So it's really easy for those thoughts to fly really quickly. And I think this is why ADHD and anxiety often flow together. A lot of people with ADHD experience anxiety, anywhere between 40 and 70 or 80%. And they're very, very similar. With ADHD, I do think it's often a mismatch in like that Ferrari engine bicycle brakes. So the part of your brain that can catastrophize can move at 100 miles an hour. It can think of every worst case scenario. It can think of every stupid thing you said. It can scan the room and potentially read a whole lot of emotions and thoughts and imagine what everyone else is feeling or thinking. And the part of you that's like, hey, it's okay, is the bicycle brakes. That impulse control or that thought impulsivity management is like bicycle brakes. It's just not as well developed. And so then it's really easy for those thoughts to make us feel very like in danger, because the reassuring part of our brain is moving much slower than the like catastrophizing part of our brain. And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so if I'm being honest with you, I would say one of my biggest challenges still, even though I have awareness, is I interrupt and I like to hijack conversations. And even though I know that I'm not supposed to do that, and then I get embarrassed because I'm, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then I'm, but now I'm aware, hey, I'm not going to say mean things to myself because I also do this, this, and this. And that's also where like living authentically, like, yep, here I am. Anyway, but so you also mentioned the executive functioning really playing into our emotions and the anxiety. So I would love to hear, as a therapist, describe executive functioning and how it plays with emotional dysregulation.
Yeah, for sure. So our executive function is the thinking part of our brain. It's like the prefrontal cortex. It's one of the things that kind of is pretty unique to humans. It's our ability to plan, to organize, to think things through, to have impulse control, to think about like, what are the outcomes of this behavior in a year or 5 years? Impulse control also includes our ability to executive function also includes our ability to hold multiple ideas in our mind at the same time. And so this is like basically the control center of our brain. And what we find is people with ADHD generally have poorer executive function. So they have a harder time with impulse control, but also a harder time like organizing multiple thoughts at the same time, or prioritizing, like, oh, I need to clean my kitchen. Oh my gosh. And then there's this clip from like the Great British Baking Show where this lady is like really nervous and she's running around the kitchen. Oh, should I pull this out of the oven? No. Do I need to wipe this? Do I need to move this? Do I need to do this? And they're like running around in circles in the kitchen, but not actually doing anything. This is like what it feels like when you can't prioritize and be like, okay, there's all these problems. Which one do I start with? That's an executive function skill. So when it comes to emotions, like there is no single step solution to emotions. Like there's some distraction and some coping skills that help like dial down emotions, but to really process emotions, it's at least 4 steps, which is observing, noticing what you're feeling, naming what you're feeling, noticing what it is in your body. So like, oh, if I'm in a social situation and I'm feeling embarrassed, it's to literally, instead of being like, oh my gosh, everyone hates me, to be like, oh, I'm having some social anxiety right now. Oh, I'm noticing that in my body, right? That's the very first step. Observe. Explore is like, I wonder what thoughts are making me anxious. I wonder if this is actually true. Like people probably aren't actually judging me. So that's like the second step, is like bringing in these counterbalancing thoughts to challenge our thinking. And then the third thing is like clarifying and choosing, like what's actually important to me? What do I actually value? What is actually in my control and what isn't? Like I can't control how other people think about me, but I can choose to be kind. I can choose to be authentic. I can choose to be present even if I mess up, things like that. So observe, explore, choose. And then the fourth one is to take action that lines up with the kind of person you want to be. So that's emotion processing. But you'll notice that's like 4 steps, and each of those steps has like 5 steps in it. So that's like 20 steps. And with ADHD, like 2 steps is 1 step too many. Like that's overwhelming.
Yep.
So you've got all these ideas in your head of like, oh my gosh, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? What am I thinking? What's going on? Does this person hate me? And it's like very difficult with ADHD to be like, okay, first step, I'm feeling socially anxious right now. That's okay. show myself some compassion, right? So like this is a multi-step process. When you have ADHD, that's very difficult to do. So then people just get like overwhelmed with their thoughts, overwhelmed with their body sensations. Meanwhile, they're also experiencing like sensory overwhelm, and like rejection sensitivity exaggerates like all those emotions. We don't have the same like braking system on our emotions. So those emotions are a lot louder and more intense. And all of that can lead to really intense, like short-term emotional dysregulation. And then when that happens over and over again, it builds up and looks like, I think often looks like depression or anxiety or even borderline personality disorder sometimes.
So something I actually just learned, and this is how I kind of describe my rejection sensitivity. So I own a business, and I do
Mhm.
want to share with you what I do, because I'm also, in addition to being really passionate about ADHD and spreading awareness about that, especially that it exists in older adults, we don't outgrow it with age. I'm in an industry that a lot of people don't even know that exists, and it's something that especially people with ADHD need to know about. So I am part of the National Association of Senior and Specialty Move Managers. If you think of moving and all of the executive functioning that's in, right?
So
And
many, yeah.
yeah, and I started this business before I knew I had ADHD. I, became a professional organizer, and I'm like the least organized person, but it's also helpful because now I can sort of break it down for people to say, okay, the reason that you're struggling is we don't like to make decisions. And if you have to move or you have to organize and now you're looking at a bunch of decisions, you just went into overwhelm. So I just wanted to get that plug so that you knew about it, so that you are
That's
aware,
cool.
of course. But the other thing that I wanted to share was that I actually, so I will get a phone call from a client or from a community that refers business to us. And they're like, hey, Jami, can you call me back? I need to talk to you. And I immediately go to, we did something wrong. They're going to say something bad. Like I never assume the good. I
Yeah.
always go. And then I learned, and this made so much sense. I mean, this is like recently, that the reason that that is our reaction is, and I don't know about if this is true, so you're the therapist that I'm asking. I had so many times growing up where it was being criticized or attacked. That's like my normal default mode, is to go to, yeah, they're going to say something negative because I didn't get a whole lot of praise. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one theory about rejection sensitivity, because I mean, there's certainly studies showing that kids with ADHD get criticized like 40 times as much as, sorry, did you hear that
I did.
doorbell? One of my kids' friends is knocking on the door right now. Give me 1 second.
No, you know what? It's a good time to take a pause, because I always take a pause anyway. And so we'll take a pause. You can check with your daughter and then we'll come back. I used to dread visiting my mother. Because of the clutter, the piles, the chaos, we all experience clutter differently. For me, it was a source of anxiety and stress. I'd try to help and she'd get defensive. We were both frustrated, and it was destroying our relationship. Then we discovered something that changed everything. My mother had ADHD, and she'd been living with it undiagnosed for over 76 years. Suddenly, it all made sense. The clutter wasn't laziness, the disorganization wasn't a choice. Her brain was wired differently, and no amount of willpower or traditional organizing advice was ever going to work. That discovery became my life's work. It's why I started the Grandma Has ADHD podcast. It's why I became an ADHD coach and specialist. And it's why I am so passionate about helping women like my mother and maybe like you. Because here's what I know: clutter affects us emotionally and physically. It damages relationships, it creates shame spirals, and the overwhelm of not knowing where to start keeps you frozen. But it's okay to ask for help. In fact, it's brave. If you're in the San Diego or Coachella Valley area, my team at Silver Linings Transitions can come to your home. We'll help you tackle the clutter with compassion, not judgment. I also work with women virtually through one-on-one ADHD coaching. And if you are overwhelmed with clutter, I can connect you with trusted resources in your area. Visit jamieshapiro.me to get started, or grab my book, This Explains So Much, on Amazon. My mother and I got our relationship back. you can get your peace back too. That's JAMISHAPIRO.me. Moving can feel overwhelming, whether you're downsizing, relocating, or helping a loved one transition. There are so many decisions to make, details to handle, and emotions to navigate. At Silver Linings Transitions, we believe every move should be magical, not stressful. We're more than movers. We expertly guide you through the entire process and do our best to alleviate your concerns. From the moment we meet, you'll feel comfortable because we will listen to your needs and wants and work together to create a personalized plan that honors your memories and your cherished belongings while helping you embrace your next chapter. We visit your new space and create a detailed floor plan, ensuring your furniture and treasured belongings will fit safely. We handle the logistics so you don't need to worry about anything, from sorting and packing to coordinating the sale and donation of unwanted items. Our professional team uses efficient, eco-friendly bins and handles every detail with care. We coordinate with our vetted moving partners, oversee the logistics, and ensure nothing is left behind, even packing your refrigerator items. Here's where the magic happens. We don't just unpack. We recreate the feeling of home. Using photos from your previous space, we thoughtfully arrange your furniture, hang your pictures, and set up your kitchen and bathroom so everything feels familiar from day one. When you walk into your new space, it's not just moved in, it's home. Your coffee pot is ready, your favorite photos are perfectly placed, your bed is made, and your new chapter begins with comfort and joy instead of chaos. This is how Silver Linings Transitions makes moves magical. We handle the emotional lifting and the logistics so you can focus on what matters most, settling into your new home. Because every move deserves a silver lining. Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro. I am an ADHD coach and the founder of Silver Linings Transitions, where we do home organizing and move management. And, you know, I did not know that I had ADHD for years. And I remember personally hiring an organizing company to come in and help me because I could just never get it together. And it really wasn't until I understood ADHD and its impact that I realized why. And so I wrote a book, This Explains So Much, Understanding Undiagnosed ADHD, because I just feel like there's so many answers that people don't even know that they're looking for, especially generations of women who grew up thinking that ADHD was just for the hyperactive little boy. It turns out it's not only a body that can be hyperactive, but it can be a mind that's hyperactive. So you can have a wonderful day and you can have something wonderful happen, and then that one negative thing that happens is going to be the thing that takes you into that spiral, and it's going to be keeping you up at night, and you're going to be ruminating on it. And I think that, you know, we as women carry so much shame and so much how it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to have it together. And I remember that was the case for me. I remember, how is it that all of these women have so much consistency and their kids get the sticker charts and everything seems to run well, and I'm the one that's missing parent-teacher conferences and my house, you know, is always in chaos. And then again, that negative self-talk. So my mission is really to educate people who have no idea that ADHD has the impact that it does. And it's to connect you to other people who get it and who will make you feel that you aren't alone, you're not crazy, you're not lazy, you're not stupid, you're not too much. You just have a brain that was wired differently. And I can't wait for you to join me in the community that I'm building, the workshops that I'm creating, the book club that I'm hosting, because I know that I am going to make a profound difference in your life. So Emma, we are not live, but I don't edit a lot of that stuff out because in fact, you'll often hear my DOG barking, and I usually am feeding him. Oh, he heard me. He knows my podcast spot, like my pretty spot in the house.
Yeah.
And so he literally like bark at me, and I'm like, hostage to him. I didn't mention his name because he's sitting here. I'm like getting away with it right now, but no, I keep it real because I've also learned. I had Dr. Eliza Barash, and we talked about like doing life on hard mode and where can I make my life easier? And so this is an example. If I had to go in and edit it wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. So when I say it's interesting, I did someone else's podcast and I observed him, the way that he interviewed me. And, he kept going back and he didn't like what he said. And I watched how anxious he was about doing the interview. And I love it. And I squirrel for a moment. I had a woman that came to hear me speak because I do a lot of presentations on downsizing. Do you own your stuff or does your stuff own you? So she'd heard my podcast and she was just like, I love how real you are. Like you're so approachable because when you have ADHD, I mean, I am constantly making mistakes. I'm constantly sticking my foot in my mouth. I'm constantly dropping or spilling. And if I had to go around like your daughter, like trying to keep it all in, I've already had cancer. I'm not doing that to myself again. So I'm real. Here I am.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And this is the reality, right? I'm filming from home. I barely even found my headphones because I like misplaced my AirPods right now. And then I used these for a trip for my kids. And I was like, no, I don't have my headphones. So I was just about showing up without those. And I'm like, this is the most, this is like the most. Yeah, no, I was lucky. I was like, this is so fortunate that I found these because this is a true, like, this is actually my life. As soon as like, whenever I go on a trip and I take my chargers and I like take them out of my bed and then I put them in my backpack and I take them on the trip, I'll never it'll be 10 days before my phone and my watch are charged again because I'm like, my system was ruined. And it literally takes like 4 minutes to like plug those things back in.
Those of you who aren't watching this, because most people listen, Emma, but I do have it on YouTube. I'm like nodding my head. I mean, it's just, it's so funny too, because when you're in people's space and you're coaching them and it's like, I can start a business and I can do this, but I've never balanced my checkbook or I'm always late on my taxes or, it's just is. It just is. So we were talking about rejection sensitivity, executive functioning. I was going to share one other thing with you, then I wanted to hear more from you. So I have a friend who she called me. We've been friends for more than 25 years. And her mom was going into hospice. And I love my friend, but I was like so busy in my own life that I never called to check in on my friend to say, hey, how's your mom doing? And so her mom passed. And I just confessed, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I feel like a bad friend because that's important to you. And I wasn't available. And she said, Jami, if our friendship is going to get torn up or blown up on, one thing, she goes, I know you love me. And she goes, and if I'm spending all this time while I'm going through what I'm going through, worrying about, oh, I didn't hear from Jami, she goes, then I have a bigger problem. And that just really made me feel so much better because I do beat myself up for some of the things that I just can't seem to get together.
Oh yeah. I think I do too. I do too, because and especially when you're high functioning in another area, like in one area of your life, it's like, why can't I get this other area figured out? It's easy to carry a lot of shame around that too. And
were you did asynchronous? Was it the asynchronous? There was a present that was you.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that was my favorite one. I would love to hear just a little bit about that if you can.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Let me just touch back on this rejection sensitivity thing. I don't want to miss this train for a second. So you said like that you think criticism has led to this, and it's totally possible. Like that's definitely one theory of like why rejection sensitivity seems so frequent with people with ADHD is that they've just been criticized so many times. But I also think there's a lot of masking and shame that's involved there. Like, oh, being who I am isn't okay socially. I have to hide this. And so then if people see a piece of it, we're like, no, like my shielding is down. How could I let people see? If they really knew who I really was, they wouldn't like me. I think that's a common story a lot of people feel. But I think it's also important to hold rejection sensitivity and rejection sensitive dysphoria a little bit at arm's length. I think a lot of people resonate with it. And on the internet, I get a little cautious about labels, because then people say, well, if I have rejection sensitivity, that means I have ADHD. And rejection sensitivity is also associated with depression. So people who don't have ADHD but have depression might feel very sensitive, feel like everyone hates them, or feel very hurt. Or people who are just highly sensitive people, but not ADHD, or people with like borderline personality disorder.
Okay, thank you. Keeping it real with a therapist.
We just have to be a little careful, because if everything is ADHD, then ADHD loses its meaning a little bit. And same with trauma. If everything is trauma, like it invalidates some treatment that is needed for different types of trauma. And so we just got to be careful about labels, like use them when they're helpful.
All right, thank you. Okay, so back to asynchronous. I just remember
asynchronous development.
Okay, so share with us what that was.
So my opening slide was like, hey, I have a giant YouTube channel, but very little experience with public speaking. And I showed this picture of this guy who has one really big bicep and one small bicep. And what you see with asynchronous development, and this can apply to like autism and ADHD, is that often people have really immense strengths in one area, but poor strengths in another, or like a weakness in another area. So they might be really, really good at school and really bad socially, or vice versa, really, really great socially, really bad at school. And one of the things we see with people with ADHD and autism is they often have much spikier cognitive profiles. So a lot of people think like your IQ is just one number, like a 100 is average and a 140 is genius. But an IQ score is actually like a subset of 4 measures of intelligence, which include like processing speed, working memory. I can't remember the other 2 right now, but different measures of intelligence. And there's a lot of other types of intelligence too that aren't even measured on an IQ, like body intelligence, like your ability to be coordinated, or social intelligence, or intuition, like your ability to tell what your body is feeling. There's just so many types of intelligence. What we often see with ADHD and autism compared to neurotypicals is that neurotypicals are often tightly clustered around the middle. So they're a little bit more balanced, right? They're okay socially, and they're okay with school, and they're okay with their bodies, and they're okay with working memory, and they're okay. And with people with ADHD, they might be smart, or they might be below average, or they might be average, but there's big gaps in these areas of functioning. So they might have like one of the most common ways to think about this is really fast processing speed and slower working memory. So your brain will crank out 50 thoughts at once, and your ability to hold those thoughts in your mind, like, and think through them is much poorer. So you're constantly like triggering your nervous system to be very anxious and very upset, because your brain, like, you say something dumb, or you interrupt your friend again. This is something I do. This is the example I gave at the conference. You interrupt someone, and you're like, gosh, why do I keep doing this? I'm such an idiot. She must think I'm so stupid. Like, and those thoughts just run. I can't keep any friends. I'm such a loser. Those thoughts run really fast. And the working memory is trying to say, hey, like, it's not a big deal. She's your friend. She cares. That part is the bicycle brakes. Much slower. Just hard for that inhibition, or that correction, or that like checking your thoughts part of your brain to keep up. So like, I mean, it's okay to have a thought like, oh, I'm such an idiot. And then have another thought be like, you know what? That's just a thought. That's a label. I actually made a mistake, and it's human to make mistakes. What can I do about it? Next time, I'll try this, see if it works. That might go better, right? That would be like a straightforward emotion process. But that's dealing with one thought at a time and holding it in your mind and using your skills, which when that part of your brain is really, really fast, any part of your brain is really fast and the other part can't keep up, it's pretty hard to do. And that leads to a lot of big emotions, a lot of big emotional outbursts, and a lot of big feelings that are hard to process because they just fly at you so fast.
So is that why you think that people with ADHD struggle with more with intense emotions, because they have so much coming? I don't know, because that was one of the questions I always ask my guests. Hey, tell me some things I can ask you. So I don't know a better way to get into it.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think that's one of the big reasons, is because your thoughts move really fast. Another big reason is that the impulse control part of your brain is less like active. Like, it's simply less active. So with people who are like physically impulsive, they might like wave their arms around a lot. Or people who are like relationally impulsive might like break up with people very frequently, or quit their job, or go use substances, right? Like, there's so many ways to be impulsive. But if you think about emotions as being impulsive, normally we do have a part of the brain like GABA, and other parts of the brain are like, no, slow it down. You're safe. You're okay. That's the like impulse control part of your emotion regulation. And if we have like speedy thoughts and poor impulse control, there's your Ferrari engine bicycle brakes, like Russ Barkley talks about. Dr. Russell Barkley, better use his full name. So like our emotions actually fire faster and louder than neurotypical brains. There's more activity in those like alarm systems in the brain. The amygdala and the hippocampus, these emotional centers in the brain, are actually like faster and louder and take longer to calm down than neurotypicals. So emotions fire hot and fast, really loud, really intense. And because generally people with ADHD have poor conception of time, it also feels like it will feel this way forever, right? You have like, you have a bad interaction with a friend, have a breakup, something sad happens, you make a big mistake, and it feels like this is who you are and who you've been forever, and you're just a terrible human being. It'll never feel different.
Yes. So, that reminds me of something that brought me into this whole ADHD space, because I knew that I had it for 8 years. I was diagnosed along with my oldest child. But 8 years later, when I was listening to a podcast about fibromyalgia and migraine headaches being very common with people who had ADHD. And so I've done an episode on that with Dr. Michael Lenz, and he said the same thing. He said, we feel pain more intensely.
That's right.
We feel emotions more intensely. So I think it was like being, when you have ADHD, it's like being amplified. It's like
everything. Yeah.
Right. It's like the sensitivity, the tag on your neck, or the, you know what I mean? So yeah, I want to just really give a shout out to therapy in a nutshell. Like I said, I have turned to it personally before I ever heard you speak, because I was struggling with one of the big emotions of ADHD, and happened to find your YouTube channel. But anything you want to share, I don't know about you, but like I'll do an interview and then I'll be like, I wish I had shared that. So I want to make sure that I've given you the opportunity to say, and by the way, I also want to acknowledge the free resources. You have a lot of amazing free resources on your website that I think a lot of people can benefit for. And that just plays into your sense of social justice to want to share those resources with people that will benefit. So anyway.
Yeah. No, I'm thank you so much for this opportunity. So I built Therapy in a Nutshell to make mental health education more accessible. So that's what the YouTube channel is. And the goal was to make therapy more accessible and those skills, because therapy is so expensive. Like I couldn't afford it. When I started my channel, I couldn't afford therapy. And I have only like 3 videos on ADHD, but people really liked them. I don't know. I had posters, so I guess people like that. I don't know. One's on ADHD and anxiety, and the other one's on ADHD and emotional dysregulation. And I go into like very specific set of steps you can take to manage that. And then in addition to that, on my YouTube channel, I've got like 2 free full-length courses: how to process your emotions and how to break the anxiety cycle. And yeah, both of these courses are like 30 videos. So
wow.
I worked on them for years, but the universe is abundant, so I've been taken care of, and I'm happy to put them out there on YouTube for people. So
I love that. Okay. So a lot of the people that are listening, like I said, they've lived their whole life knowing something was off, but not knowing what it was. And now they're finally coming to the, oh my gosh, I had ADHD this whole time. What do you say to them? I mean, and by the way, as you can imagine, grief and relief with that understanding.
Yeah. No, so much. I remember sitting in the doctor's office. This was before I was formally diagnosed, but I was with my one of my kids who did at the time get an ADHD diagnosis, and I was crying. My doctor, who knows what I do for work, is like, "What? Why are you crying?" And it's not because my kid has ADHD. It's because it's my fault that my kid has ADHD, right? Like that's what I was believing and feeling, and it still is. Like it's so easy to feel like, oh, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my brain? Am I like hurting other people? Like I think it shows up for me in relationships mostly. I know for other people they see it in their school or their work, but for me it shows up in relationships. And it's an interesting thing to get your head around. So I guess the first thing I would say is like, I'm right here with you, and I don't have great ideas because I'm still in the process myself. I do in general like to hold diagnoses at arm's length. If you understand how mental health diagnoses work, they're a symptom checklist. When you have the symptoms, you meet the criteria. When you don't have the symptoms, you don't meet the criteria. Now, ADHD, I do really consider to be highly genetic especially compared to like depression and anxiety. It's much more highly genetic and it's a developmental disorder instead of like a mood disorder, right? In the DSM. However, like diagnoses come with pros and cons. So a diagnosis, some of the great things about having a diagnosis is you have access to shared language and you can look up articles based on what you're experiencing. You have access to research around treating other people with that same cluster of symptoms and what works for them, right? You can talk to the community and see what works for other people. You can find your people. That's all really helpful. With diagnoses, there also comes like on the negative side is sometimes people like relate too much to their diagnosis and then they think, well, this is who I am, this is my entire identity, whether that's like a broken identity or the whole like I do think there are great accommodations out there, and demanding that everyone accommodate us isn't always the best. Like we have to hold this at arm's length to be like kind of thoughtful about how we apply diagnoses. That's what I would say is like just be thoughtful, be cautious about making it your whole identity, over identifying with the diagnosis. I also think like I don't think there's anything wrong with someone with ADHD. Like I think yes, it can be very disruptive. It can be so disruptive. And there's certainly other people with different takes, right? Like if you compare like Dr. Russell Barkley, he's going to be like, yeah, no, we have to acknowledge this is a disorder and it has negative impacts and it needs treatment. And then you take someone else on the other side, maybe Dr. Hollowell or someone else, and they'll be like, well, there's like gifts and curses. Like there's both.
Yeah. I just interviewed him, by the way.
That's so cool. Wait.
He was my woo. He's going to be the 100th episode. We're not quite
That's so cool. I can't wait to hear it. That sounds amazing. I really like his approach.
But I want to acknowledge a few things that you said. Number one, because this is something that, I believe all three of my children have ADHD. I didn't choose it. I didn't wake up and say, I'm going to give all three of my kids ADHD. I'm going to pick it. But you know what you do when you have something, you lean into it. You like, okay, how can I make this work for me? And by the way, I'm not going to say that all of ADHD is amazing and gifts. There are gifts, which is going to lead me to my next question for you, which is the button question, which I normally ask at the break, but hey, we're rolling with it. Were you at the 2024 International ADHD Conference when Penn Holderness gave the keynote address?
Nope.
So remember the easy button with staples,
Yeah.
So he basically said if he had the opportunity to press the button and not have ADHD, so it was part of his presentation. So I like to ask that of my guests. So if you could press the button and not have ADHD, what would you do, Emma?
That's such a good question. I am 100% grateful to my ADHD because like I want to make a shirt that says like can't sit still is my superpower. Like I have done so many cool things thanks to my ADHD. Like literally my YouTube channel is my hyper focus. I get so excited waking up in the morning and writing a video. Like that is my favorite thing to do. And 177 million people have seen my YouTube videos.
Wow.
Like who would have thought like a little stay-at-home mom in Utah could like write some videos and like get on the internet and like help that many people? Like I wouldn't have thought that, but literally if I didn't have ADHD, this would not have happened.
So it's no, you would not press the button.
I would not press the button. However, like I am still pained by how my ADHD has impacted my kids.
Sure.
Like I cannot just sit down and like play with my kids. It is so boring. It is unbearable. And I make myself do it a few minutes every day, but I'm not like that mom who can just be like, oh my gosh, I can just listen to you talk and like listen to you all day and like just sit and play dolls. So I feel like as a mom, like that hurts. And so like for myself, absolutely not. I would never get rid of ADHD. Like look at all the cool things I get to do. But I do wish I could like decrease the hurts it has caused to my relationships. But I wouldn't push the button.
Okay. So first of all, I'm sensing your pain and I'm going to start to tear up with you because my baby is about to graduate high school. And of course, I'm in a very reflective point in my life where I'm like, was I the mom I wanted to be? And, and and I have actually asked them, like, what did you think? I mean, that's one thing I'm really good at, is just being really open with them. And I have acknowledged that I was the mom at the end of the day. Then, like, how quickly can I get you to bed? Because I'm done. And now, of course, I'm looking at that time, and but I was doing the best that I could be doing in that moment.
Right.
But I have also been the mom that spontaneously, hey, have your friends over and we'll do a spend the night, or was able to communicate with them and acknowledge. So we cannot beat ourselves up. I mean, and there's a towel in my bathroom, and I wish I could remember it, but it's like, all those moms that have the gold stars and do, and keep their house. I'm like, I want one of those, right? Like,
yeah.
But you also said one other thing that I have to tell you. At the M&M store, like, there's one in New York City. I don't know, there are other places, but there's an orange shirt, which, by the way, orange is the ADHD awareness color, that when I saw it, I had to buy it. And it says, I'm afraid of what would happen if I relax.
Yeah, that's about right.
So I totally get it. I want to share one other thing with you that I think would be helpful, and then anything else you want to say. So Jeff Copper has become a really good friend of mine, and I've had him on the podcast a couple of times, and he brought up an accommodation that we don't think of, but it was such a brilliant accommodation, and he calls it an accommodation hiding in plain sight. And that is that, with ADHD, we need to verbally process. We need to, like, when you were talking about how do I make plans to do this, blah, 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 that if you could I could just ask you some questions. So what do you need to do? And all you need from me is that a combination of me kind of just asking you questions so that it will help you clarify. And he was just on my last podcast that aired, and I'm like, oh, that is so good. And I know that some people will listen to this podcast and not listen to others. And so, but I want to say one other thing. I know I keep saying that, and then I promise it's all you.
No, you're great. I love hearing you. You have great wisdom.
I heard another great thing that I used to tell my kids: hurt people. And then I heard Michelle Obama, I'm listening to her book, Becoming, and she said, scared people are just hiding inside scary people. But the other part of it, I like that new part that I just heard, is healed people heal people.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's what you're doing. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're taking what you were given. There's logotherapy in Viktor Frankl's book, Say Yes to Life. He's like, how do we make this mean something? How do we make this suffering mean something? And I totally resonated with, like, when you had those tears, I felt those tears with you. Like, I was feeling them, because here I'm going to start again, because I have them too. I mean, but you have every day to change, or to be better, or to acknowledge. And also, I went through a lot with my kids. I went through a divorce. They saw me dating. They saw all of it. They saw me not eating because I was stressed out. And I just shared it with them, because, like, they are going to have to navigate life. I didn't expect to get cancer at 34, and there I was. So when they get to see us get through those hard times and pick ourselves up, or maybe improve something that we don't like about ourselves, and that gives them an opportunity to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the only alternative is to be like, I'll only love myself when I'm perfect. I'll only, like, accept and like myself if I'm a mom that's perfect. And it's like, well, okay, then what? Never, Emma? Is that right? Is that the only option? Right? Like, we've got to be human. And I think it's really how we respond to our hurts and how we respond to our weaknesses that matters. Hopefully we can do it with appreciation and gratitude and compassion. And that's like how we
give a friend. Like, when you give a friend the same, so why can't we give it to ourselves? Yeah.
And I think it takes practice, and it's something we can do. I've certainly, that's the one thing I would say out of all of this stuff. Like, these are skills that can be learned. Like, you can learn, like, really good accommodations and management practices with ADHD and with the big emotions, with depression and anxiety. Like, there's so many skills that can be learned. This is one of the things I said in my presentation at Neurodiversion, was when we worked with these girls who came into New Haven, and they would have, like, serious issues going on. I mean, like, a lot of them met the criteria for borderline personality disorder, which is a very severe form of mental health disorder. And then a lot of them also had, like, problems in school, like suicidal ideation. Some of them I worked with had eating disorders. Some of them had multiple suicide attempts, depression, of course, anxiety, of course, like, all the things, like, so many things going on. And we put them in this environment where they were basically getting 100 skills a week. Like they were in an environment where they were eating healthily, they had regular wake up and bedtimes, they had exercise each day, but they also had like 6 or 8 hours of therapy a week. And they had staff who they could talk with and process and learn how to work through their feelings all throughout the week. So like 100 miniature interventions each week where they were being interacted with in a positive way to learn how to work through their feelings. And at the end of treatment, which was a year, right? Like this was a very intensive program. Like 93% of them no longer met the criteria for the disorders they came in. Like they were no longer depressed or anxious. And then 2 years out, it was still in the 70s of like these kids were like 70% of them like were not in treatment, did not continue to need supportive care in that way, and did not meet the criteria for like depression or anxiety or whatever they came in for. And what this comes down to is not because like I was an amazing therapist. It had very little to do with that. I did an hour and a half of therapy with them, an hour and a half of therapy with their families each week, but that's not what did it. It was like small, consistent changes over time that were implemented, helped them learn the skills to process through their emotions, to manage big flare-ups without like hurting themselves, but instead to do something helpful. And those little skills added up over time made a huge difference in their lives and in their families' lives. And that's just the message I have is like, there's so many little skills. Most people have no idea which ones they are and that they even exist. But if you take the time to like learn and implement and practice those skills little by little, they just accumulate and can really make your life a lot better.
I love it. This has been a great interview. I really appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate what you're doing for those of us who do have struggles with our feelings and our emotions. That, like I said, I definitely resemble that remark. If you want to find Emma McAdam, you can find her at Therapy in a Nutshell. Any other parting words before I close our podcast?
I would love to just throw these things out there really quick. I go into a lot more detail on these in my video on ADHD and emotional dysregulation. But if you're struggling to work through your emotions, usually it's working memory that's lacking. So it's like, make it visual. You've got to make your coping skills visual and in a physical place somewhere on your phone, on your wall. This is how we support that emotion processing. So if you know what your coping skills are, you know what music calms you down, you know what distractions help you get your head about you, then tape those to your wall where you can see them. So make it visual, make it physical, make it concrete. So get all these crazy is too strong of a word. Get all of these intense, dramatic, cognitive distortional thoughts out of your head, write them down, put them on paper. And then the third thing I would say with processing emotions and working through big emotions is, it just fell out of my brain. Make it physical. Take care of your body. Take care of your body. So use movement in a way to process feelings, because often we have a lot of it, like a bodily version of these feelings. So going for a walk, taking care of your sleep, taking care of your eating, taking care of your water intake, exercising, things like that are really important to managing emotions when you have ADHD. So there you go. That's my last.
That was awesome. Okay. So I always like to end my podcast, and we actually already said this in here, but like I said, a lot of people hearing this, they're meeting all of those feelings. And I always like to end with the message that it is never too late to make the rest of your life the best of your life. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Emma, for agreeing to be on my podcast. Thank you for all the feelings. It was amazing. The opinions expressed on Grandma Has ADHD podcast are those of our guests and hosts and are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content discussed in this episode is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The hosts, guests, and producers of Grandma Has ADHD do not assume any liability for the content of this podcast. Listen at your own discretion.